My name is Frank Kodak, and today, December 11th, 2013, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak with a respected law librarian and past president of the American Association of Law Libraries, Jean M. Wenger, head of public services at the Cook County Law Library in Chicago. Our conversation is part of the Oral History of Law Librarianship project, a component of the Spinelli Law Library Reference Shelf on Hein Online. The setting for this conversation is the conference room at the headquarters of the American Association of Law Libraries in Chicago. Jean, it is a great pleasure for me to speak with you today about your life and career as a law librarian.
Frank, I'm very happy to be here today. I've been honored to be asked to participate in this wonderful project.
Well, it's our pleasure. Let's begin by learning a little about you personally. Can you tell us about your early life, where you were raised, your family background, and what your childhood was like?
I'm actually a city kid. I grew up on the far north side of Chicago with my mom and an older brother. I had a great childhood. Chicago, as you may know, is a series of streets and neighborhoods, and my street was one of the streets that had probably some of the most kids in the neighborhood, so we were out a lot, running around having a great time. I attended Catholic schools here in Chicago, and I had a great education, and that was largely in part to the Benedictine Sisters of Chicago, who had control of me for 13 years, from kindergarten through senior year in high school. And particularly in senior year in particularly in high school, it was great. The nuns were a wonderful example of women in leadership, and I was very impressed by that. And just to put that in context, this was the 1970s, so women in leadership, that was very much a kind of a novel concept. So I had a great education. I did find that in grammar school, I started off being a volunteer. I would volunteer for a lot of different activities. And I also was very interested in art. I would draw, and I'm going to mention some of these things just because over the course of my life, I've realized that things that I was interested in when I was young and as I was growing up, I've really kind of tapped back into some of those different talents. So in art, I enjoyed that very much. I studied it in high school, and I bring that up because I've done displays at Cook County, I did displays at Cornell, or even putting together a PowerPoint. I hope I can do something better than just a list of bulleted points, make it a little more interesting and informative. In high school, I was very much actually grammar school and high school, very much a science geek. This was the 1960s space exploration. I found that fascinating. I actually won a science contest in 7th grade, building an offshore oil well.
Oh my God.
So I was very interested in science, and in high school I studied biology, chemistry, physics, honors calculus. So I thought I had my career goals pretty much set, and that I was going to go into the sciences.
Very good. Well, we're going to come back to that in a moment, but before we do that, let me ask you about what you like to do when you're not working. Perhaps we've already heard some of that, but what are some of your hobbies, passions, and pursuits outside of law librarianship?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm very interested in art. I haven't had time recently to do that, but I enjoy painting, oil painting, watercolor. I like to travel, and I have several places on my bucket list, such as Scandinavia, Japan. I'm looking forward to going to Berlin in a couple of years. So I hope to do some more of that. And I think I realized too that there's going to be interests in things I haven't really discovered yet, and I'm kind of looking forward to discovering what those are and becoming involved. And I'm sure as my life goes on, and being a lifelong volunteer, I will find something to volunteer for as well.
I am sure that is true. So now we know a little bit about your personal life. Can you tell us about your educational and professional training and perhaps your early career aspirations?
Well, when as I said, I was in high school, I was very interested in sciences. And I can recall looking at which college was I going to go to. I had a number of different options. Was it going to be a university, a larger school, or perhaps a small college in the Midwest, or East Coast, West Coast? I remember that was a very exciting time, and thinking, gosh, where am I going to go? This is going to be very important. And I can remember advice my parents gave me. They said, it's not so much where you go, it's what you do when you're there. And I think that's been it has been very good advice for me throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did decide to go to St. Mary's College in Winona, Minnesota, a small Catholic liberal arts college. And I got started off in the pre-med, biology and math. And towards into my second year, I kind of thought, I have other interests. And actually something I meant to mention when I was in grammar school and high school, I was very interested in history. Having an older brother, I used to raid his bookshelves, and he was very interested in World War II. So I read a lot about that, I read a lot about European history, and I think that was the early spark of my interest in foreign and international arena, which ultimately led to foreign and international law interests. But I think it was that history and that looking at that global view and other countries, which I found absolutely fascinating. And I will admit to studying 3 years of Latin in high school. And I did end up, though, studying. I was required to study in the program. I was at St. Mary's foreign language, so I did pick up start studying German. But as I was in college, I'm thinking, I really would like to do something in the international arena. Gosh, it'd be great to travel, to go overseas, maybe live overseas. So I reconsidered my major, and I was also interested in public service, government service. And I thought that would also be perhaps a good venue or entree into working in foreign international. So after a year of decision, I changed my major to public administration. And to keep it interesting, I tossed in an economics minor. And I also took the opportunity, I thought I'm in college, to do the semester abroad. So I did end up going to Loyola University's Rome Center. And I had an absolutely fabulous time for 4 months. And I was able to satisfy my interest in art. Certainly several trips to Florence and Paris while I was there with the Europass, and that was a wonderful experience. And I actually still see people from that I was at school with at the Rome Center. Many of them are attorneys, interestingly. But that was a great opportunity for me. Another interest I kind of had, and this kind of actually again followed me through from grammar school, is for fun, I used to like to do theater. And I was in theater in kind of a Park District thing when I was in grammar school. In high school, I worked more with my art in terms of displays and stage construction. Although this is absolutely nothing to do with law librarianship, I was in a competitive Rockette squad. But that was fun. But I also did some theater work in a touring vocal chorale in college. And again, this was another experience where I brought me in front of people. So, and I think looking forward to when I began teaching and doing presentations, having that experience of being in front of a group of people, in front of an audience, I found that there was something I could tap back into those experiences. So many things as I was going through, and I kind of bring this up too, and we may talk about it later in the interview, just for newer law librarians, there's a lot of experiences that you probably have had that can help you develop skills in your current position.
That's a very good point, and I'm sure we will have a chance to discuss that a little bit further on. So your first position after college was as a foreign currency trader. But after 3 years, you entered law school at the University of Illinois in 1984. What led you from currency trading, which at least to me sounds pretty interesting, to the law?
Well, when I graduated from college, I knew I wanted to continue my education, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to continue it in. And I also felt it was valuable to have some professional work experience that when I did ultimately get whether it was a law degree or a master's degree, that I felt that would be useful for me in terms of finding an ultimate position. I did, as a public administration major, I did an interest in government work. I did take all the tests for the federal government, the state government, but this was 1981, and the economy was in tough times. So many of the government agencies were not hiring. In fact, they were furloughing employees. I had thoughts I might be interested in working for airlines. But they also were furloughing employees, so it was kind of a tough time. But also back then, they didn't have a thing called building security. So you were able to walk into a bank or a corporation or a financial institution, walk through the halls, find their human resources department, personnel department, and present your resume and say, do you have any positions open? Can't really do that so much anymore.
Things have changed.
Yes, they have. So that was actually my tactic for finding a job after college. And I was walking around downtown Chicago here, and there was a company, Deke Herrera, that claimed to be the world's money experts. And they traded foreign currencies and precious metals. And I thought, that looks interesting. So I walked in one day with my resume in hand, and they actually had just put a job notice in the paper. And they said, "Are you interested?" And I said, yes. At that point, I was just interested in
Sure.
finding a position. You figure
Right.
once you're in a place, you can move around. So I was hired that afternoon.
Oh my gosh. So walked in off the
Walked
street?
in off the street with my resume. And my mom always said to go and, make a presentation. You make a good presentation, have your resume in hand, and, that could open up opportunities, and it certainly did.
Well, good for your mom and good for you.
Yeah, it was. So I started, the first month I kind of just did general office things. The second month I was there, I was doing accounting work, which I had no training in, but I was learning to balance spreadsheets. And third month I was there, they asked me to take over the trading, the foreign currency trading, because the person who didn't come in, and it was actually each department had like one trader. So I had a crash course in currency trading. And this was actually with the banknotes, the physical currencies. And we traded every marketable currency. So there was over 120, I think, at the time, of foreign currencies. My primary customers were banks in Chicago and throughout the Midwest, corporations, and we also had an over-the-counter operation, so people could walk in if they were going overseas to buy currencies. What a fascinating job to start off with.
Yeah.
Just the developing a client base, keeping the customers you have, learning, and this is all phone work, learning to develop relationships, develop your intuition. I learned great negotiation skills, in knowing when, okay, this is a new customer, how far can I go on the rates? Because I was setting all the rates. And you're working with the volatile commodity. It was often a two-handed kind of phone conversation, but it was a really great experience, and I enjoyed it very much. But after 3 years, I was thinking, I'm thinking of maybe moving on, different company, and I also thought now might be a good time to reconsider, what do I want to go into and study. And I kind of decided it was going to be either a law degree or an MBA. And with the MBA, I could do that on a part-time basis in the evening. In Chicago, there were a number of MBA programs. But law, that was a 3-year commitment. So I was really going to focus on that full-time. And if I was going to do that, I was planning to go away for school. And I decided on the University of Illinois. And I was accepted there. So then I began my law degree.
So what were the deciding points between the MBA and the law degree, or do you think? Or?
Well, actually, the law, because I wanted to, if I was going to do a full-time program, I thought, I was at the point in my life, I'd been out of college for 3 years, I thought that would be a good time to do it. And I figured the MBA, I thought I could always, if I went to law school and start working afterwards, then I could take the MBA if I wanted to. And I will admit that I wasn't really necessarily that keen on practicing law. Again, with a public administration major, and I still have an interest in government work, that I could envision myself not having the traditional legal career.
Even before you started?
So I wasn't dead set on working in a firm, a big firm, small firm. I was perhaps considering going into government service. Okay. And also, again, this is the mid-'80s. And I thought, well, 3 years, if I don't do anything with the law degree when I get out, I certainly haven't wasted my time. If I never use it, I'm still a better informed citizen for having the law degree. And I can say that now. I can say that, I could have said that then, because tuition at the University of Illinois was $2,500 a year. I wasn't going to be mortgaging my next 50 years. So it's a very different environment back then, and you could make those decisions.
Yeah, it was unfortunate that that is no longer the case. Well, let's talk a little bit about what you did while you were a law student. You were a reference assistant at the Cook County Law Library during the summers, and and a graduate assistant at the law school. So my question about those experiences was, were you drawn to law librarianship, or were those just opportunities to earn money when you were a, quote, starving law student?
Well, as I was ending up my first year of law school, like many of my classmates, we were asking every lawyer we knew about, whether, do you know of any summer openings where I could work? And one of the attorneys I spoke with said, well, sometimes they hire summer help at the Cook County Law Library. And I thought, well, it is law related, and I'm not, again, I wasn't brokenhearted because I wasn't in a firm, because that really wasn't so much my goal. I was just looking for a summer job, law related, and I was able to get an interview, and I was hired as a summer clerk. And the Cook County Law Library is the public law library here in Chicago. We're in the Daly Center, and there's several hundred judges in the building. We're not a courts library, we are a county law library, and we're a practitioner's library. We're open to the public, but we are primary, at least back then, our primary patrons were attorneys. Mm-hmm. And so my first day of work, they put me at the reference desk. Mm-hmm. And to give a little example of what our reference desk looks like, I have measured it. It's 50 feet long. And back in the mid-'80s, we would have about 1,200, 1,300 patrons a day coming in. There would be 7 reference attorneys perhaps working at the same time behind this 50-foot counter. And lawyers could be 2 deep, lined up end to end. It was that busy. What a fabulous place Absolutely. To work. I can remember my first question on my first day. I remember standing there and the attorney was asking me a question, and I thought, I should do this. And I probably had a deer in the headlight look, but it was just me and this attorney, no one else in the world. And we're just looking at one another. And I'm thinking, I know the question, and I figured out where I had to look. Then it dawned on me, but I have no idea where to find it in the library. It's my first day. But my colleagues at Cook County were fabulous. They took me under their wing. They were so generous with their time and sharing their experience. They were a fun group of people. They enjoyed one another's company, and it was just a fabulous environment. And that first week, I don't think I sat down for a minute, and I was hooked by Friday. Started on Monday, and I thought, this is great stuff. I mean, I could see myself doing this. And I had a wonderful summer. I learned a lot, and it was great because I also learned a lot about the law. Because attorneys would come in, and I would be introduced as a law student. My colleagues would introduce me, and they, would talk to me about the profession and just talk to me about law. And I just learned so much interesting about the practice of law, even though I wasn't planning necessarily to practice. But it was a wonderful experience. And the last day there, before I went back for my second year of law school, my coworkers got together, bought me a cake, and threw a going away party for me. And I was so touched, and it was so nice. And later that day, I was talking to the administrative assistant to the executive, and she looked at me for a minute, and she said, they must really like you. They've never done that for anyone else before. Wow. And I mean, the feeling was so mutual, and so I happily went back for my holiday breaks for next summer, and I eventually got a job, inquired, and I was offered a full-time position. In terms of, when you talk about the starving student, I did mention about what tuition costs. It still wasn't cheap,
Sure.
So I actually, in my first year, I saw a posting for a fellowship, and it was through the U.S. Department of Education, and it was for Western European Area and Language Studies. And it was really a kind of a goal to promote amongst graduate students interest in and knowledge of Western Europe, and I believe they had it for other parts of the world as well. And I thought, gosh, that sounds custom made for me, because again, I still have that interest in foreign international, and I had to take language courses, so I just would pick up my German, I thought, and I had to take take some history classes. Anyways, I applied and I got the fellowship, which is very nice. It also was a tuition waiver and a very nice stipend. And so I was able to really kind of feed my interest in foreign continuing my foreign language studies, which I might not have done just if I didn't have that motivation to do that, in addition to my law classes.
So just to clarify, this is, you're talking about while you were a law
Yeah.
student?
It was my second year of law school, was the fellow. And so I was able to definitely keep that interest in foreign international life. And then going to my third year, I thought I had 2 summers and X plus some at working at Cook County, and I thought I could, certainly was looking for another, if I could, tuition waiver. So I applied for a graduate assistantship, and I was in the law library. I worked reference desk one night, and I would file foreign language legal materials. And the challenge with that was just getting those binders open. They're very different from American binders. And I would do subject cataloging of some foreign language materials. And I actually had the opportunity, Tim Furley was the assistant director there, and he was actually going to be gone part of my third year, so somehow they thought I could help out perhaps with some of the foreign material. And Tim also worked at Cook County Law Library as an intern at one point. So
I
it
did
was
not know
kind of
that.
interesting.
I knew that Tim had been at Illinois for a good
Yeah.
part of his early career, but I didn't know about Cook County.
Yeah, so it was, so I really, as early on, that first week of my first summer there at Cook County, I really decided, I
Law
like this is
librarianship was
interesting,
a
yeah.
viable
It was a lot to learn yet,
career
but
opportunity.
if I could work in that environment, and so I did inquire and was offered a full-time position right away.
Good. Well, and actually, I think you've really kind of addressed this, but just to formally ask it. So you did pass, you
Oh, wait.
completed your degree
Mhm.
in 1987,
Yeah.
you passed the bar,
Mhm.
and then you became a full-time reference librarian shortly thereafter at Cook County. And I think you've probably already answered this, but I'll give you a chance to speak to it directly. What made Cook County a good place to start your library career? You talked about the wealth of and the breadth of the reference work.
It was one very large collection. Unlike a county law library, which is maybe just focused on the current materials and more of a local collection, we were established in 1963, and we opened in 1966 as a free public law library open to everyone. Prior to that time in Chicago, lawyers had access to a Chicago Law Institute, which was incorporated in 1857 and was a very large and important law library in the region. It was a library where attorneys would buy shares. So when the free library would open up, that would certainly impact Chicago Law Institute. So they ended up closing their doors, and through I want to say some good old-fashioned litigation in Chicago, the Cook County Law Library ended up with their collection, which we took over from very nominal fee. And so we have a very rich historical collection as well, and a foreign international law collection, which did not escape my notice.
So, and that came from the Chicago
That came
Law
from
Institute.
Chicago Law Institute, and then it was continued, carried over when Cook County Law Library opened up in '66. I also, since I did pass the bar, and I thought, well, as a technically licensed attorney, working with practitioners just was, something I was familiar with and something I enjoyed. And at the time, I also joined the Illinois State Bar Association and Chicago Bar Association, and I've been a member ever since. And I also felt it was important that I would be attending bar events or programs, and attorneys would see me and they knew me from Cook County, and so I think it really kind of was a nice synergy that I was involved in the local bar, at least maybe not involved, but at least a member of.
Sure.
And they would see me, and then it just kind of would generate good discussions, and it was just kind of which actually has led to my involvement in CLE and things of that sort for the bar associations.
Great.
So when I started working at Cook County, I just had my law degree, and then I had my library degree. My intent was to get my library degree. So once I paid off my law school loans, which when I did that, I got my library degree. I was able to do that part-time in the evening. I attended Rosary College, and the public library, Chicago Public Library, just opened a new facility at the time, and they had classrooms. So they would offer their classes just a few blocks from
Yeah.
Cook County, so I could just walk over after work, and was able to complete my degree. I'll also note I'm very consistent about my interest in foreign international, because when I was getting my library degree, I saw a notice for a summer program at the University of Wales in Aberystwyth, their library school, and I talked to one of my library professors, and he had taught at that program, so he was familiar with it, and I was able to transfer my credit. I did go to that program. It was a wonderful program, and I talked to law librarians from Saudi Arabia, Tanzania, Kenya, Malaysia. It was a really wonderful experience, and then I got my library degree.
So you were at Cook County for 8 years, and then you moved east to Ithaca, New York, where you were a reference librarian at Cornell Law Library from 1995 to 1997. Curious what motivated that move, and what were the differences between working in a public law library and an academic law library?
During the time while I was working at Cook County Law Library, I was getting my library degree, I was building up experience, and I kind of thought, I was doing probably more like one-on-one teaching, if you will, with the attorneys. And we also were, at the time, had a Westlaw terminal, which is probably one of the few Westlaw terminals in Chicago. And a lot of the firms at that time did not have Westlaw. So they would come over to Cook County.
A public
and do
terminal.
Well, actually, it was not exactly a public terminal. We would, my colleague, my supervisor, Montel Davenport, and I would do the searches for the attorneys. They would sign the agreement with West through us. We would sit there, and this is new. I mean, and it's not that long ago, so a lot of things have happened in the last 20-some years with technology and computers. But we would sit there and do their searches for them. We kind of almost worked like reference attorneys, because they weren't familiar with the interface and how it worked. So I was doing a lot of like teaching, and I thought, I would kind of like to maybe try this in classroom. And I saw the posting for the Cornell position, and I thought, if I had to write a job description for myself of something what I wanted, that would kind of been it. So I interviewed for the position. I was offered the position as a reference librarian. So I moved to Cornell, and I was very excited about the opportunity to teach in a classroom. The reference librarians there did the teaching for both the regular legal research as well as they did the Lexis Westlaw training. And so that was kind of, I was able to expand on what I had already done, and I certainly had a wonderful foreign international law collection, which I greatly enjoyed working with. We certainly, I worked with Claire Germain, who was the director. So she was the expert in foreign international law, but I was able to work with the faculty on their questions, and I would do research training. And again, this is also the time when the internet was just coming into the World Wide Web was brand new. And I thought, gosh, what a wonderful vehicle for foreign international law. I mean, if I can tap into a computer that's over in Europe or Latin America, just think how much research I could get done. Little did I know how it would grow to such as the extent it is today. So I did work there. In terms of the differences between, certainly I think probably I'm addressing more of the similarities. You certainly excellent public service, reference service. When I say public, I mean public service as opposed to technical service. Developing great research skills. I'm always finding there's always more for me I can learn. Even today, I'm constantly learning new things. So the difference is certainly the type of the collection. I was involved in collection development at Cook County, and I was also involved in collection development at Cornell. And you're really looking at different focus. At Cook County, it would be the practice materials, the form books, the analysis, interest in terms of how to, manage a jury, how to, those questions, very practical kinds of things. At Cornell, I was doing, it's more the scholarly, intellectual, and the work would be stretched out. If I was working with a faculty member, we could be working for months on a particular project. Where at Cook County, in between court calls, they would come up, they need it now. Not later today, now. So you had to be able to respond to those requests.
So your work with your patrons was immediate
Yeah.
thing, whereas perhaps in the academic environment it might be more extended.
Yes, certainly, and that was, I certainly expected that, and it was both sides were very interesting, because with the attorneys coming to Cook County, you maybe would find this great piece of information, and you never found out how it turned out. Where with the faculty member, you'd be or the student, if they were working on a project, or the journal, they also was liaison to the journal, you would be working with them for the extended period, so it was kind of nice to see how it developed and how your work contributed to theirs and what they were trying to accomplish. One particular difference in foreign international, at Cook County, I would be looking for a particular national law. I just recently searched for the adoption law for the Congo, whereas at Cornell, it was more public international law. So there's definitely a difference that I would see between the type of work I was doing. I was doing a lot of UN material versus, Cook County would be more the foreign national law.
So in 1997, you returned to Chicago and the Cook County Law Library as Government Documents, Foreign and International Law Librarian, a position you've held until becoming head of public services in 2013. So including both stints, if my math is right, which is always a challenge, you've been an integral part of Cook County's public services staff for nearly 25 years. You've already touched a little bit, but I'm going to ask you to think about if there are some stories or people, events during those years that you might want to share with us.
I moved back to Chicago. My family is here, and as many of us are dealing with aging parents and things of that sort, so I came back to be close to my mom, and I decided at that point, because I know people do move around, to stay in Chicago, because I think it was important to me, and I certainly had a very interesting past 17 years, I think, if my math is correct. And some of the stories from Cook County, certainly being open to the public, and now our patron base has changed over the years. As I said, when I first started working there, was predominantly attorneys, although the public would come in, but you really didn't see too many public patrons. Now, as is the case with many public law libraries around the country, it's probably really a mix of probably 50-50, 40-60, depending. So you certainly deal with a range of questions. I always tell people there's no question that's off the plate in terms of topic or area that we would be dealing with. You get questions, everything from the routine to the bizarre. I had one question, a patron wanted to find out how he could turn his wife, return his wife, or something like that. And it ended up after in the reference interview, I discovered it was a combination of family law and immigration issues. But I was kind of like, okay.
Take you back a little bit.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, whatever question you get, you deal in a professional manner. You seek to find, what information are they looking for, and you go about trying to assist them. We've certainly had patrons who have turned up on the news for a variety of things, everything from murder to more petty things. It's also interesting that things that happen in the news, things I read about, will be reflected in reference questions we get. This could be a plane crash, and we start getting questions about aviation litigation. Or just, for example, with the healthcare law, we get questions about that. So we get a range of questions, and I think I just find it fascinating to have those kinds of questions. And I still work with foreign international law, so we get questions even from the public. Certainly people have large families, and Uncle George passes away in Greece. What happens, kind of thing. So it's really intriguing. I mean, and you always learn something new. The questions that come in, it's an opportunity to stay engaged, and it's also a great opportunity. I love to teach. I love to assist people in finding that information. And now we have a lot of public access terminals, so it's sometimes helping people just getting used to using a computer.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something I derive real satisfaction from, as well as from the attorneys to the person doing their own divorce. It's a very diverse and very interesting.
So it would sound like if you were to say to somebody, well, I've worked at the same library responding to questions for 17 years, the uninformed might think, well, geez, you must have heard every question that could possibly be asked, but and therefore the job becomes dull and stale. But it sounds like it's always changing. There's always something new.
Well, my responsibilities have changed over the years too. I'm not at the reference desk as much. I'm certainly probably doing more in terms of the technology. In fact, when I came back, we had librarians who had been specializing in local government documents, federal government documents, foreign international. In '92, before I went to Cornell, I was appointed the Foreign International Law Librarian. When I came back, through attrition, people would leave or retire. I would add on to my responsibilities by taking over those particular roles. I'm very active in collection development and now in management. So those are in the technology, the web work. So those are things that have, even though you've been at an institution for a number of years, that institution has not stood still or has certainly changed. So to be involved at a level in so many different areas, and certainly in my involvement through association work and professional development, which I'm sure we'll be talking about in a moment, that has enriched our career. And it was a decision that I did say when I came back that I was planning to stay in Chicago. In Chicago, as a market, there's many people who've stayed here for their entire careers, and it's a fabulous place.
Absolutely. Well, it is a great city, and the law library community is a very interesting and rich and diverse community, and so I think that would definitely be a plus. Let's switch gears just a little bit, but staying with your professional career, but not talking generally about your professional roles, but more about some of the individuals that you've met and worked with during your career. You talked earlier about the fabulous, very helpful staff that you encountered from day one at Cook County, and a beautiful, heartfelt story about them seeing you off as you finished your first summer. But I wonder if there are some other individuals that you'd like to specifically mention who you've come across during your career.
Certainly. Well, actually, I certainly will acknowledge the directors at Cook County Law Library over the years. It certainly gave me great opportunity. Bill Powers was the executive that hired me as a law clerk for that summer. Benny Martin, who succeeded Mr. Powers, offered me the full-time position, and he retired in 2011 from Cook County Law Library. But again, he was very supportive of my many roles and my habit of volunteering for things throughout the years. My supervisor, Montel Davenport, was head of public services, whose shoes I am now filling, and he is now the executive law librarian at Cook County. So it's been wonderful to work with him and his support. Certainly, Claire's been a mentor for me.
Claire Germain.
From Cornell, yes. And we, even though I left Cornell in 1997, we still, as we'll probably talk about soon, met up again for association work. And the many law librarians just throughout in the FCIL, Foreign Comparative International Law Special Interest Section, as a newbie coming in from my first annual meeting in 1988 in Atlanta, and working with them and becoming involved in the FCIL SAS. There's many people I've met over the years who I admired and who've been an example for me. And I think that's one of the strengths of this association. And I certainly hope that I'm able to provide that to the newer law librarians or other colleagues in the profession.
Very good. Jean, you have, let's talk about professional activities and service. You've served the law library profession in a variety of roles, too many to mention really, but I do want to single out your work on the national scene as the chair of the FCIL in 2003-2004. Then you chaired the annual meeting program committee for the association's centennial meeting in St. Louis in 2006, and most important, you served as its president, ALS president in 2012-13. Can you tell us something about these individual experiences, what they meant to you, both professionally and personally?
Well, actually, those three really kind of encapsulate my I call my great interests. Foreign International, FCIL, SAS, being the chair. That was a wonderful opportunity. And I can recall the year I was chair was also Janice Johnson's meeting in 2004 in Boston, and her theme was Foreign International Law.
That's right.
So, I mean, that was a perfect connect for me. And in fact, Janice had asked me to serve on her annual meeting program committee because they were interested in having programs in that area. And it was just wonderful having the opportunity as both as chair and just through my work at FCIL, SAS, to work with colleagues from other county law libraries, particularly LA County and law schools, and learn about their collections and learn from them, work with them on programs. That year we were able to do a number of things. We actually had a panel, as Gail Warren was the AMPS chair, and her and I thought, wouldn't we need to have a panel of the foreign law librarians who are coming to our annual meeting and have them talk about law librarianship in their home country. And even though it was kind of an impromptu panel, we had a packed room because I think there was really an interest in that. So that was a great year to serve as FCIL chair. In not long, actually, I think it was home maybe about a week from that meeting, and I thought, oh, take a break, relax. Claire Germain called, and she asked if I would be willing to chair her annual meeting program committee for her meeting in 2006, which was the centennial year. And I readily accepted, and it was a very exciting opportunity. Education has always been so important to me. I mean, I've learned, and I've tried to attend as many things as I was able to over my years, whether it was through WLL or locally in the CALL chapter, Chicago Association of Law Libraries. And also, I feel that for the association, education is one of their primary responsibilities and benefits for the members. And to be involved at such a level in providing that programming, and especially for the centennial year, it was very exciting. And it was great to work again with Claire and the committee. And we were able to, I think, I was very pleased with how the year went and the programs for that.
Well, as someone who chaired one program during that meeting, my program was focused on ALL's history and its personalities, but my recollection of 2006 was a great mix, both acknowledging and celebrating and learning about the history of our association, but also looking forward. So congratulations to you on putting together such a great program. It's interesting to hear about your feelings about that opportunity. Tell us about your year as president.
That's just concluded in July. Gosh, that was what an honor and a privilege, and having yourself being a past president. You sometimes think this is incredibly
You have to pinch
important.
yourself
Yes,
a little bit,
yes,
don't you?
often
Yeah.
you do. To serve the profession, to serve its members, the members of WLL, and I think I would say I couldn't think of working with a finer group of professionals. Certainly our members, just the enthusiasm, the interest, what they bring, and to be in a position as WLL president. And I think back when I was studying public administration, one of my, Dr. Hyland, who's actually my mentor in college, he was talking about the role of the U.S. president. And he said, the president doesn't have to know everything or do it all. The power of the presidency is in persuasion and bringing good people in to accomplish whatever needs to be done. And so I kind of remember, I thought about that. And I was very honored and privileged that we had great people coming in to work on committees. My annual meeting program chair, Julie Paparja, the local arrangements, Tina Ching, Rita Germany, did wonderful work, and those are very important appointments. There were committees were excellent, and just what we were able to accomplish throughout the year with members. And coming in terms of the role of the president, your year isn't just separate and apart from everything else that goes on in the association. It's a continuum. And there were many excellent initiatives that had begun in prior years, and that work wasn't completed in that year. For example, the vendor colloquium and the Future Summit. Joyce Janto and Darcy Kirk, respectively, as presidents, came and had those initiatives in their years. But the work needed to be done, so it's important to take that work and make sure it's brought forward and that those tasks are accomplished.
So your writing heard not only in your own initiatives, but on the work of the prior presidents.
Making sure those things are accomplished and they're carried forward because they're critically important. One thing I was looking at was when I was first elected, I thought, with my background in the education initiatives of the association, I thought, in Seattle was a great meeting city, and I thought, I would really want to do something that would even invigorate the annual meeting, the education programs more. And it turns out, as often things kind of converge in a very positive way in our lives, the association had the consultant coming in and looking at the meeting and coming up with new initiatives, recommending things that could be done. And then the executive board, which when I was my year as vice president, Darcy Kirk convened a committee, annual meeting, special committee. And we looked at the consultant's report and we came up with things that we thought needed to be achieved for the annual meeting, particularly education. So I was very excited to have the opportunity to take those initiatives and implement them during the Seattle meeting. So that was something that it was a kind of huge sea change in terms of looking at education.
So just to clarify, the consultant was asked to look at how the annual meeting is done, in particular with reference to the educational programming, and perhaps suggest some different ways or either could be added to or built on the existing methodology to enhance the programs or the educational program.
Yes, and it was the members of the executive board annual meeting special committee which came up with what you
ultimately did wasn't the consultant said do this,
it was the association.
Here are some ideas.
And he just said looking at different associations and what the trends are, because associations in and of themselves are unique organizations, and there's trends within professional associations. And he wanted to make sure that WLL is taking advantage of new initiatives, new trends in offering and presenting educational programming and how they're developed and how they're presented. So that was an exciting thing to be able to implement with it. So I was very happy to have that chance to reinvigorate the educational programming at the annual meeting.
And again, as you say, you were only able to do that because the previous president had convened this, had gotten this rolling, but it really then fell to you, or gave you the opportunity, if you want to put it in a more positive way, to be able to implement.
It was something, and so those are things we were carrying over and making sure that those things are complete. And there's certainly, as I said, important parts of the association. So, and also I did serve on the executive board from 2007 to 2010, and one of my roles while I was on the board was chairing the strategic directions committee, the board's strategic directions committee. And in that 2 years, we developed the 2010-2013 strategic directions. And so my year as president, I was kind of bookending. It was a very fascinating experience, bookending the strategic directions, and we developed the 2013-2016 strategic directions. So there were a number of things going on within the association that, things of education, things of strategy, that I think not only as an association, but as individual members within our institutions, it's critically important that we think strategically. And really, I was very fascinated. I learned quite a bit about strategic planning.
I'll bet.
And how, and looking back, I know you're interested in history, and when I was chairing back in my prior term on the board, the Strategic Directions Committee, looking back at the history, how the association had done strategic planning in the past, how we should do it now, and what we could accomplish in the future. And it was very interesting to see how that development took place, the evolution, and how I felt the 2010, 2013 strategic plan was an improvement over the past one. And I think the one we have now, 2013, 2016, is a growth. So I think we've really become very adept at strategic planning, and it's really become part of what our thinking in terms of moving the association.
It's interesting you should say that. I guess if I were to think about it, and for good or for bad, I've been around all the time that we have been actually doing strategic planning. And I think initially it was a big thing that was sort of separate and apart. It wasn't considered just a normal thing that we would do. And now, the way I see it from my perspective, a few steps back, it does seem to be that's just part of the operation. Really, is to continually be looking ahead and thinking strategically, as you say. I think you've touched upon, I'll say formally again, you've just completed that year. You're 6 months away from handing the gavel off to Steve Anderson as the current president, and you're serving as the immediate past president. So your presidential term really isn't completed until next July. But maybe it's not too soon to look back and for you to wonder or to help us identify what you consider to be some important initiatives and accomplishments of your presidential tenure, perhaps ones that you're going to have to be looking to Steve and to future presidents to fully implement, sort of in the same continuum that you talked about before.
I think certainly strategic planning, that is an ongoing plan. And it's Kate Hagan and her executive director, WWL, and her staff have been really critical in helping the board and the membership move forward with strategic planning and how we implement it. And how we think about it, I think, is, and you say it's really become part of, and we're making it more a part of what we do as an association. And I'm very pleased with the educational initiatives we've put in place for going forward. I felt I was willing to take a risk and maybe change some things. And because unless we try something different, we'll never know if it's going to be successful. And certainly, I think as every president understands, it's going to move on. I mean, it's you've had the opportunity to put your mark on what you could be doing, and certainly I was very pleased to just continue the work of the association. Again, moving it forward, hopefully inspiring people that, I mean, this is a great opportunity to work within the association. There's many ways of becoming involved. So it's just strategic planning and the education. I hope that if I want to say would be, I'm calling legacies or things that if I want to identify in my term, those would certainly be things that I would be very proud of.
Well, as well you should be. Those are not small matters at all. So in addition to your national service, you've been very active in your local chapter. You mentioned the Chicago Association of Law Libraries a moment ago. Among other things, you served as co-editor of the Call Bulletin for 5 years, and then as Call's president in 2004, 2005, which I think overlapped with some of your national duties as well. So apparently that volunteerism really, you were not just saying that. Well, what's been the difference for you between local and national service?
The Chicago Association of Law Libraries, there's differences, there's actually a lot of similarities, and I say that because in Chicago we have I always say we're a library-rich city. There are 8 law schools where people are, active members. 6 are in Chicago, and then there's Valparaiso in Northern Illinois University. We have a number of firms, large firms, multinational firms, medium-sized firms. We also have the government sector, court, state court, federal court, Cook County, some of the surrounding counties, as well as some of the government agencies. So we have a very good mix of members, and the members have been very active. So in some ways, it's kind of like a microcosm, if you will, of WWL in many ways. Having been on the executive board, we do chapter visits, and chapters, there's 30-some chapters, they differ in terms of based on, what kind of, if they've got schools there or what the law firm landscape looks like. So we have a good mix of members that are active and involved. I think chapters are an excellent place to become involved for members. There are a number of places people can spend their time, and I think chapter volunteerism is a great way to go. And in terms of the differences, I mean, certainly WWL is larger. I think I see more similarities between CALL and WWL than I would say we see differences. Certainly education is very important to CALL members. We have regular meetings, and I think we certainly, as a chapter, have looked to WWL for, as a model of a professional law library association.
I've always thought that one of the reasons that, certainly not the only reason, but one of the reasons that Chicago has been such a active and influential chapter is its location here in the city, not only for the reasons that you mentioned, but for the fact that ALL's national headquarters is here. So there is a synergy that perhaps is not available to other chapters in other locations.
And actually, the CALL board, even when I was president, we would meet at WWL, and we still do that today. And I remember celebrating the 50th anniversary of CALL in 1997. And on the train in this morning, I was doing little calculations. In 2020, about 8 years away, we'll be celebrating our 75th anniversary. So I certainly hope I'm around to celebrate with CALL.
I'm sure you will be. So the workload of AALL president is obvious, but I'm sure that all of your professional activities, including the educational programs that you make for ALL and CALL and the Illinois State Bar Association and others, have been time-consuming. There's no way that they could not have been. So, do you have any suggestions for newer law library colleagues on how they should approach professional service in a, what I would call, quote, do more with less environment in which so many of them work today?
I think, as I was thinking about the question, the first thing I'd say is do something you're passionate about. Do something you really enjoy. If you're going to have to select something, if that's possible, select something that you like doing, you're excited about, you're curious about. I think I had a lot of curiosity, which tended to get me into things. But thankfully, they were all good things for professional work. And I know I've been very fortunate over my tenure that I had great support from my institution. Very understanding, as I mentioned, depending on Montel Davenport, and all my staff, my co-workers at Cook County have been very supportive of that. I also had a very supportive family. I used to tell my mom, well, I'm doing this presentation or I'm teaching this class, and I knew that wasn't her cup of tea, but she'd say, well, if it makes you happy, and I would think, yeah, I do enjoy it. I do get a charge out of doing this. There's certainly work involved, but it's something I do enjoy. As I would give a colleague advice if you want to get started, there's a lot of different venues. It doesn't have to be a big bang at the start. I think I got started, my first volunteer within the association. I actually got a call for the CALL union list here in Chicago for the chapter. Mm-hmm. Cook County, no one had updated our holdings for a while, so they were looking for a gullible new law librarian to update the holdings for the. So I said, yeah, actually that makes sense. And I was able. It helped us at Cook County as well. So it was kind of. I always try to match my interest and turn that over into what can I do, how can this benefit my institution wherever I may be working at the time. And I think I've been able to do that, and I've used that as a point of when I'm asking for support, This is going to be very interesting because I think that can be a good, if you're looking for institutional support, and I know, like for the annual meeting, there's been information about helping members become, just even attending a meeting is a level of involvement. Because if we didn't have people, whether it's a chapter or the annual meeting, if people weren't attending, that would impact the association and the work. It could be something as small as if you're interested in writing maybe 2 paragraphs for a bar newsletter or a library newsletter a couple times a year. Maybe it only comes out 3 times a year, but yet you've published something. That's important. It's a start. And I think if you get started on one thing and think, gosh, this is interesting, or someone's noticed me in this article or this little piece. Maybe I should do more. Or people will ask you. It's amazing when you start doing something. A lot of times you offer, the calls start coming in. So I think there's a lot of different venues, and I've been fortunate in being able to be involved in a number of different, both like the local chapter, obviously national chapter, WWO, the bar associations. Any kind of you do kind of develop you can develop a recognition that people would like you to participate. For example, for a number of years I taught the research portion of a boot camp for the University of Illinois. There was actually she was a year ahead of me at University of Illinois Law School, and she was teaching this boot camp, and it would be second, third year students coming to Chicago for a week in January, and going around to the judges, doing depositions, and certainly Cook County Law Library would be a place they would perhaps come to do their research, and she thought it was a good entree into what research is like for a practitioner. And here it was and that has actually led to doing webinars for the Bar Association, doing some lead programs, or for now there's a new program. So it's kind of like one thing led to another. And you're able to reuse, repurpose, probably a better way of putting it, a lot of the work that you do. So you don't always have to reinvent the wheel each time. Depending on the audience or a particular topic of the day. So there's a lot of opportunities to do it, and certainly if newer members, having observed or looked at several of the interviews on this oral history, this profession is just full of people who would love to get a call and say, gosh, that was, or you did a program, or I heard you say this. How did that work in your profession? How was, did you enjoy doing that? How did you get to do that? I think just, for a newer member to call up, and I think I'm always often getting calls from whether it be law students or library students. I want to come over and talk to you about, I'm thinking about this as a profession. And I don't know a law librarian who will not sit down and talk all afternoon about the profession, about the work they do. So certainly there's a number of different opportunities, and I hope newer members get excited about the profession. And certainly, I've talked to a couple of lawyers over the years who'd walk up and say, "You look like you're really enjoying the work." I'm like, "Yeah, I am," and like, how can I do this? So certainly, I think there's a lot of venues, both big and small, local, national, and there's a lot of people who'll be more than willing to help you in your interests and your endeavors.
Very good. Well, I just also want to pick up on something that you said earlier in the interview about, you kind of mentioned it in an offhand way, but it really fits in with your response here, which is that you feel that all the professional activities that you've done outside the scope of your library, although they, as you are telling us, really help your work in your library, but they enrich your own personal life and enrich your career and made it more enjoyable. I certainly would say that about the project. I want to thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to speak with us today about your experiences as a law librarian. Your remarks will be a valuable addition to the project and of interest to both current colleagues and those who will join the profession in the future. So thank you very much.